following is based on a true story.
There's evil in this world. They live among us, lurking in the unsuspecting places you and I go to daily. It's scary to think that amidst such darkness, our everyday routines continue. Every morning, my day starts with the same ritual. Coffee, hot and strong. Then there's Lily, my 7-year-old chatterbox. I cherish every moment with her, especially after losing her mom last year. Now it's just the two of us, navigating life one dad joke at a time. I laced up my boots that morning, ready for the first day of a new gig at the old abandoned shopping mall set for demolition. I dropped Lily off at school, kissed her goodbye, and off I went to work. For some reason, my gut was uneasy that day. I brushed it off, but by the afternoon, I'd learned that bad things could happen to innocent little children. I arrived at the abandoned mall at around 8. Everything seemed normal at first. A few guys were chatting, preparing to get their tools and equipment. Some were surveying areas to be demolished first. I went over to my supervisor to see what he wanted me to do. "Hey Mike, I want you to take a look at that section of the mall before we start demolishing it," he motioned and pointed to indicate the direction. "There used to be an antique store there. I noticed there's still a big pile of stuff," he continued with this funny look on his face. I couldn't quite figure out what it was. Disgust, maybe? So, I grabbed my PPE and headed over. That store was at a far dark corner of the building. You know, every mall has one of those corners where it's just creepy as hell. Yeah, that's right. This was one of them. As soon as I walked into the vicinity of that antique store, I noticed there were a lot of flies. These were those big suckers, like they could suck blood out of you. A bizarre number of them circled in this one particular spot close to the center of the unit. It's annoying enough to have a couple of them buzzing around you. Now it was a swarm of them. I must admit, I was pretty grossed out just from the sound alone. The swarm of flies led me to a specific area on the floor. This part was covered with debris and old broken bits from the antique store. There was something about this spot that was just a bit off. The buzzing was louder here. When I stood still, I could hear the soft crunch of broken porcelain and wood under my boots. And the smell, it was like opening an old book, but worse. It mixed with this stale stench like rotten fish left out of the fridge for too long. At first, I thought someone had left food to rot there or something. So I started to clear the debris. Under all that junk, my boot hit something hard and hollow. Clearing the debris away, I found it. A trapdoor. This wasn't like those new fancy ones. It was old, the wood aged and darkened, with rusty metal handles that looked like they hadn't been opened in years. On the door, there was a symbol of a 5-pointed star enclosed within a 14-pointed star. Around the circle of stars, there were some strange scribblings. It looked like it was straight out of a scene from a horror movie. When I touched the handle, a chill ran through me. The cold metal felt out of place in the dusty room. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. I radioed in and asked a few guys to come over to help me. When they arrived moments later, their expressions went from curious to concerned. We decided we had to see what was beneath. We used a couple of crowbars to jam into each side of the door. Even for a couple strong guys, it took all our strengths to pry open a little crack. The trapdoor finally swung open on the 5th try. The first thing that hit us was the smell. It was 10 times worse than the room above. Thick, damp air mixed with a scent I can only describe as death. Old wood and mold, mixed with something much fouler. And the darkness, it was like looking into the abyss. The weak beam of our flashlights barely pierced it. There was a ladder leading down into the abyss. I have to admit I was hesitating a bit about going down there, afraid of what I might find, but I had to know. So I carefully climbed down, and the rest of the crew followed one by one, except Pete. "Hey Mike, I ain't going down there. This shit is creeping me out, man," he declared from the top of the ladder, and he left. The rest of us three, me, Jake, and Julia, decided to venture ahead. We put on our industrial masks, hoping to fend off some of that stench. That didn't work. I found us in a tunnel surrounded by stone walls. It reminded me of stories about old dungeons. The flies, which seemed more concentrated here, buzzed loudly around. Each of my steps echoed eerily. Looking around, I noticed faded symbols on the walls, and some spots had a worrying reddish-brown tint. The end of the tunnel opened up into a chamber. A large old table draped in symbol-covered cloths took center stage. Broken chairs, decaying cabinets, and weird artifacts were everywhere. And then I spotted it, a door that looked newer than anything else here. I crept towards the door, and as I stepped on something, it made a crunchy sound like crushing a potato chip. When I shone my flashlight down, I saw a gigantic cockroach oozing stuff all around. My foot had squashed it flat. Then, as I looked around the floor, I nearly freaked out. There were dozens of them scurrying away in all directions. The sight was horrifying. I shuddered with disgust. Suddenly, something tapped me on my shoulder. I literally jumped out of my skin. I turned around and saw Jake. "What the hell, Jake?" "I'm sorry, Mike. I don't think I can take this. I'm gonna head back out." "Sorry." Jake was genuinely scared. He quickly retraced our steps and left. I turned to Julia and asked, "You okay?" Julia nodded. She was so brave, but I could see the fear in her eyes. With each step towards that smaller door, the buzzing of the flies got louder. We could feel the vibrations in the air, like tiny electric shocks on our skin. We reached the door, and above it, a faded sign read, "Private, stay out." Well, too late for that. The door had an old-fashioned knob. It was a protruding brass handle with carvings on it. The knob had been tarnished with age. More of those symbols surrounded the frame, but one in particular caught my eye. A tiny handprint, the size of a child's. Taking another deep breath, I turned the knob. Surprisingly, this door opened easily. As it creaked open, the sight inside made my heart drop. As I stepped further into the room, my eyes landed on a small table in the middle. There, lying motionless, was the decayed body of a child. Julia let out a scream at the sight. The skin of the child was withered, and the tiny bones peeked out from patches of rotting flesh. I tried to breathe, but the air was thick with a smell I can only compare to old meat left out in the sun for way too long. Scattered around the table, old toys and stuffed animals lay abandoned. They were covered in so much dust and spiderwebs that it felt like they had been there for ages. But what truly sent chills down my spine was the wall to my left. It had shelves lined with old photographs of children. Some of them were smiling, and some looked like they had been crying. But every single picture had one thing in common: the two stars in a circle drawn over each child's face. I couldn't help but wonder, why were they all marked like this? Julia gasped. "Oh God, I think I'm going to be sick." There was a heaviness in the room, a suffocating sadness. A silent scream echoed in the walls. I took one of the photos from the shelf, the face of a young girl, no older than Lily. There were dates and names written at the back, and the latest one was just a few months ago. "Julia, let's get out of here, now!" My voice was urgent, every instinct screaming at me to leave. She nodded, tears in her eyes. "We have to tell the police." As we emerged from the basement, the weight of what we saw pressed heavily on our shoulders. I wasted no time. Pulling out my phone, I dialed 911.
911, what's your emergency?
The operator could sense the urgency in my voice. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as they neared. The cops arrived quickly. A swarm of blue uniforms surrounded the old antique store. They cordoned off the area with yellow tape. Detectives, forensic teams. The whole scene looked like it was pulled from a CSI TV show. The next few days were a whirlwind of news coverage. The old mall became the center of everyone's attention. Local newspapers started to dig into the history of the antique store. A chilling narrative began to form. Decades ago, there were whispers in town about a cult. The two stars in the circle, it was their symbol. They believed in some twisted ritual involving the innocence of children. But over time, these stories were dismissed as just town legend, urban myths to scare the children. But now, the legends were all too real.